Hey everybody, it's Friday. So that means it's Star Trek Day. Welcome to the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina Kristina. And how are you today? Good, I hope. Um Last week we did the final mission of Wesley Crusher, Bring Out the Tears. We're gonna miss him. He needs to come back soon. Not in season 8, 9, when he comes 7, 7, 8. Right, there's only 7, right? So last week we did the final mission. This week we're doing the lost. Next week, Deadest Day, and the week after, the Wounded. Please hit the like and subscribe. Let me know I'm doing a good job. There's no special effects here. I have no theme music. There's nothing extra special going on here. This is very, very low tech. No money, no talent, just reading books, talking books, just watching Star Trek, talking Star Trek. Please hit your like and subscribe. I've got this fantasy to hit 1,000 subscribers by Christmas. It would be a Christmas miracle. Those of you who have already subscribed, I thank you very much. I only need 900 more of you to submit. So please hit it, and please check out my Flashback Mondays. We're currently doing 2008, what books I was reading in 2008. I also do a daily book review every day of the week. So please check those out too. I'm a series person, so I read series, and I'm trying to do a different, every once in a while throw in an oddball. So they've been good lately. So please check them out. So today we're starting with the Lost. This is a TROI episode. There is no voice overview for the captain in the beginning of this one. So Deanna's in her office, and she's talking to a patient. Janet Brooks, she's the ensign. It's been 5 months since Mark's accident. I haven't missed a single hour of my duties. I volunteered for extra time in the nursery. Managed my language studies are better than ever before. Someone else might have given in, but I didn't. Troy says, given in to what? Brooks says, death. What? Come here. Come here, camera queen. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come say hi. No. No. I don't want to be on camera. No. I hate being on camera. If you haven't checked out my sleigh video, yeah. Mommy's not on the floor. I can't get pets. Given into what? Brooks says death is a normal part of life. Maybe some of us are better at facing that than others. Or maybe some of us aren't really facing it at all. Sometimes we suffer more than our suffering requires. What do you mean? Recovery from a great loss involves a great deal of pain. If we try to avoid that pain, we only make it harder on ourselves in the long run. Brooks says, but I feel fine. Troy says, recovery from a great loss involves a great deal of pain. If we try to avoid that pain, we only make it harder on ourselves in the long run. But I feel fine. Today would have been your husband's 38th birthday. Brooks, you keep excellent records, Deanna. Last night I dreamt Mark was with me celebrating. I was so glad this nonsense was finally over. Then I woke up alone. No, hey. No playing with the wires. No. Rumi. Then I woke up alone, and I knew he was dead. For the first time, I knew it. I looked around for anything that belonged to him. I forgot that after the funeral, I had them take all it away. What in the world was I thinking? Troy says they didn't take everything away. Would you stop? So then Troy says they didn't take everything away. And she gives her the box. She's like, how did you know? So then we start off with a little silly. Picard is talking about an ancient trailer along the Cabo River in the Himalayas. It's a wonderful program, Will. It would do you good to get some fresh holodeck air. And Riker says, I think my horsemanship is a little rusty for the Himalayas, but thanks anyway. Picard goes, nonsense. We'd program an appropriate docile steed. Uh-huh. And Worf says, uh, our sensors are indicating a vast field of, and then he stops, and then Picard goes, of what? And Worf goes, it's gone. Something did appear to be directly in our path. Now, chick gets in several episodes, and she does a good job. So I'm impressed. I mean, Wesley Crusher's gone, so she's filling in for the few episodes till Ro shows up. But she's doing a good job, and she gets bragging rights that she was actually in Star Trek Next Generation, and she had lines. And she was a member of the cast for a short period of time. But she had lines. She did a good job. She was on camera a lot, especially in this episode. So I'm just saying, she does a good job. And I just wanted to point that out, that she gets bragging rights for a really long time. So Alan B says, deflector shields are not encountering elevated fields of interstellar matter. And Riker says, a sensor echo data? And data says, uncertain. I have no unusual readings, Commander. Okay, then we go back to Troy's office. And Brooks is like, I'll come by to see you tomorrow, Deanna. And Deanna's like, gets this headache kind of thing. And she says, Deanna, are you all right? And Troy's like, what? And Brooks is like, you faded out for a second. And she's like, no, I'm fine. I'm just tired. Will I see you tomorrow? And Brooks is like, yeah, tomorrow. Okay, so then we go quickly to the bridge. Data says an aggregate field of plain polarized objects has just appeared and then disappeared. And then we switch back to Troy's office where she's in pain and she's fallen to the ground. Then we switch back to the bridge. Riker says, recommend we run a diagnostic on the forward sensor array. We don't want a ghost tailing us all the way to Til Beta. Worf, I'm not convinced it was a ghost. There may be something there, Commander. Picard says, Ensign Elby, full stop. Allenby goes, aye, sir. Picard says, let's investigate both possibilities. The only way to make her stop chewing the wires was to pick her up. She's not happy. She's not a happy camper. What? What? She's not a happy camper. What? What? Don't you like Star Trek? You gonna be my co-host? You gotta stop chewing the wires. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. She don't care. She's like, you're just dangling there, mommy. I'm like, no, we're not chewing the wires. She disagrees. Ow. I forgot where I was. So then we get a brief voiceover. Captain's log, stardate 44356.9. Sensor diagnostic has been completed and indicated that all systems are normal. There remains no explanation for the images which appeared in our path. It says, I have completed another full scan of the area. There is no further indication of the anomaly. Picard says, Ensign, prepare to resume course to Til Beta. Mr. Data, what velocity would put us back on schedule? Data says a resumption of our course at warp 6 will place us at Teal Beta in 6 days, 13 hours, 47 minutes. Trying to get the right frame for this was hard, so I just skipped it. Remember a couple of episodes ago when Riker was taken in by that kid who was supposedly the Romulans and he lost 16 years of his life? And one of the ways to test Data was to ask him to make a computation, and he couldn't because the kid wasn't getting used to it. I thought this was a little flashback or memorandum to that particular episode. What was it? Almost Human. Um, so uh, Data says, I've completed another full scan of the area, so there's no further indication of the anomaly. Picard says, Ensign, prepare to resume course to Till Beta. Mr. Data, what velocity will put us back on schedule? Data says, a resumption of our course at Warp 6 will place us in Till Beta system 6 days, 13 hours, 47 minutes. And Riker's like, what? No minutes? No seconds? And Data's like, I have discovered, sir, a certain level of impatience when I calculate lengthy time intervals to the nearest second. However, if you wish, he's like, no. Minutes is fine. Picard says, stand by, ready at warp 6, Ensign. And Allenby says, aye, sir. Picard says, engage. Riker says, to engineering, Geordi, what? Oh, wait a second. We have a little bouncy. Picard says, engage, and the ship bounces. I just thought I'd point that out. He's like, I probably say this often, but he didn't tap this. He just spoke to the air, and the computer or the ship automatically knew to take his voice to engineering. It could have taken his voice to anywhere in the ship, but he spoke to the air, and his communication automatically went to engineering. Didn't tap the little thingy, no, just spoke to the air. He said, Geordi, what happened? And Geordi responds. He hears him all the way down to engineering without tapping anything, without the computer going, connect to engineering or anything like that. It just automatically happened. I know. You gotta go with the flow. Sorry. All you Star Trek people probably hating on me right now. I just thought I'd mention that. He's just talking to the air. And it just automatically knows. And she's going after the wires again. So Riker goes, Riker to engineering, Geordi, what the hell happened? And he just he's checking. Looks like the field collapsed before we could enter warp. Recommend full stop while I'll check it out. After full stop, Ensign, aye, sir. You are so cute. I wish I could put her on camera. Got wires all over my floor. She's on her back, legs spread, taking a bath, trying to fake me out. She's gonna take her collar off. She washes her face and slowly works her collar over her head. I see you, Smokey. She's doing a fake out. You want mommy to sit on the floor? I forgot where I was. Back to full stop, Ensign. LB says, aye, sir. Data says, all decks reporting minor injuries only. Picard says, damage. Data says, none. Worf says, weapons and shields are normal. Riker says, go to yellow alert. Allenby, Captain, we've been started moving again. Something is pulling us. Okay. So TROI contacts the doctor. She's in lots of pain. Beverly comes over the comm. Yes, Deanna. Beverly, I'm feeling very dizzy. Beverly says, did you hit your head? TROI says, I'm not sure what happened. Beverly says, lie down, breathe deeply, stay calm. I'm getting calls from all over the ship. I'll be there as quickly as I can. And my comment is here is they've got over 1,000 people on that ship. And she has a full staff of medical people. Could she have not sent one of her medical people if there was something that was massively needed her particular attention? Then she could have sent one of her medical people to Deanna's room, and or she could have had more of her medical people take over what she was doing, and she head to Deanna's room. But I mean, Deanna just said she had a headache and she didn't have a physical injury, and they would want to treat the physical injuries first. So then, she was driving me crazy, playing with the wires, eating the wires, doing all this kind of stuff. So I joined her on the floor to stop all the dangling, and she left. She's giving me the evil eye from behind the scratching post. She thinks I can't see her. There are two little ears above the box. Smoke, I see you. She's like, no, you don't, Mommy. No, you don't. Um, Allenby says, new heading confirmed 025 Mark 273. Speed is holding at 1/10 impulse. Riker says, whatever's pulling us sure isn't in a hurry. Picard to LaForge, go ahead, Captain. Picard says, if your engines are functional, we'll attempt to break free. Geordi says, everything down here seems normal, sir, but I suggest we take things a little slower. Ensign, Picard says, Ensign, bring us around 90 degrees to starboard. Allenby says, new course in laden, 90 degrees to starboard. Picard says, 1/4 impulse engine, engage. Allenby says, aye, sir, nothing, Captain. Speed and course are unaffected. Picard says, 1/2 impulse. Allenby says, no change. Picard says, full impulse, rotate heading in 5-degree increments. Allenby says, aye, sir. Riker contacts Mr. LaForge. Geordi says, there's nothing wrong down here. The engines are fine. Data says, integrity stress now exceeding 82 million kilodyne. Hey, Star Trek fans, what's a kilodyne? Don't step on my computer. Integrity field stress exceeding 82 million kilodynes. Recommend immediate shutdown, sir. Make it so, Ensign. Allenby says all engines shut down. We're still being pulled. Same heading, same speed. Okay, so then we're in Troy's office. Beverly says, I got here as quickly as I could. We've got a sick bay filled with headaches. How are you? Troy says, when I first called you, I was feeling intense pain, but now it's gone. But I'm still a bit foggy. Beverly says, I'd like to take you to sick bay and run an intraneurical series. Can you walk? And they get ready to go, and Riker's voice comes over the intercom. All senior staff report to the observation lounge. Beverly says, are you up to that? Troy says, I think so. Beverly says, what is it? Troy says, nothing, I'm fine. So they're in the observation lounge. Riker says, could it be some sort of tractor beam? Data says, no other ship is indicated. Picard says, Mr. Worf, what's your analysis? Worf says, technical sensor readings are indeterminate. Geordi says, they don't even give us enough for an educated guess. Riker says, and yet all sensors are operating properly. Picard says, can there be an intelligence at work here, Council? Do you have a sense of a life form out there? So then he asks Troy, and she says, no, I don't think so. No, there's nothing strange. I sense nothing. Picard says, it's all right, Council. Perhaps there's nothing out there to sense. Data says, indeed, there are many races that are not empathically detectable. The Breen, the Ferengi, and he stops. Troy says, no, no, you don't understand. I don't sense anything. Not out there, not in here, all of you. You're all blank to me. Okay, so then we're in sick bay. Um, Beverly says there's no indication of a concussion or a blow to the head, just a pattern of unresponsive neural cells throughout the cerebellum and the cerebral cortex. Troy says unresponsive. Beverly says there's brain damage. How serious? I can't tell. Troy, but I can't. I feel perfectly fine otherwise. Riker says, can you treat him? Beverly says, I'm not sure. I'll have to review the database on betazoid neurophysiology. Um, Troy says the betazoid brain has remarkable ability to heal itself. This condition could just reverse itself in time. It might, but you are half human. That changes the map a little. I don't want to offer you any false hope. Uh, Riker, what would cause something like this? Because it happened at the same time we encountered the anomaly. See, see, hint, hint, hint. It goes over everybody's head. Belly says there may be a connection. I don't know if you were anyone else. You know, the first thing I do, I'd send you to Counselor Troy. Troy, well, then I have an advantage, don't I? Don't I? I see her quite often. Beverly says, Deanna, it's no different than one of us suddenly going blind. Troy, you don't have to tell me, Beverly. I'm the psychology. Beverly says, you may understand it, but you've never had to live with it. Troy, I may be perfectly fine by tomorrow. And you may not be. I'll do my homework. I'll see what I could do to regenerate those cells, but in the meantime, I want you to talk with someone. There are several therapists on board who have degrees in psychology who are qualified therapists. Troy's okay, fine. If I need to, right now, I just want to get back to work. And Riker's like, Deanna, and she's like, if there are no medical objections. Beverly's like, there's no medical objections. Troy's like, thank you. So we go back to Troy's office. Riker says, I don't have a psychology degree, but if you'd like to talk. Troy, you know the worst part of this, and I've seen it happen so many times to so many patients. Riker's like, what? Troy, the way other people change, how they start to treat you differently. They walk on eggshells around you. Sometimes they avoid you altogether. Sometimes they become overbearing, reaching out, helping a hand to a blind woman. I'm sorry. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come on. Where you want to be. Riker's, I'm sorry. Troy's like, well, I won't be treated that way. And Riker's like, hey, Mizadi, oh, please. Um, Deanna, I've never seen you quite so scared. And he gives her an old big hug. And the writers give us a taste of what the relationship between Riker and Troy could be. They tease us immensely with this relationship that they will keep dragging out and we won't actually get till the movies. I think it's a sin. I think they should have just let the relationship continue. We got an angry pussycat here. Sorry. Um, but they throw in all these roadblocks. They even give her a relationship with Worf at one point. Oh, sorry. But it's just frustrating. Okay, then we're back in engineering, and Data says probe launch is successful. Telemetry transmission are being received. Jordy says, let's see what we've got. Nothing unusual here. Same readings as the ship sensors. Data says expanding analysis parameters, including Bayesian functions, EM, and subspace spectrum polling. Data says, I'm now adding virtual particle trajectories. Jordy says, whoa, what was that? Unknown. I'm attempting to analyze motion patterns results still inconclusive. And they show the screen with the string. And Jody says, last time I saw anything that looked like that, I was skin diving off coral reefs on Baracus 5. And I would like to point out again that in season 2, the doctor offered Jordy replacements, and then we got a teaser in Almost Human, Jordy with human eyes. I don't know why they just don't go through with that. It's this is the 23rd, 24th century. They should have the technology to do this. Jordy should just go ahead and do it. I don't know why the writers are making him walk around with this thing. I'm hoping he can see out of it, but I remember LeVar Burton talking and saying he couldn't. So we'll see what happens. It was really good acting on his part. Okay, then we're back in Troy's office. Troy says, "You said you woke up a new woman this morning." Brooks, "That's how I feel." Troy says, "Tell me about her, this new woman." Brooks says, "She's not holding anything back anymore." "She's not?" Brooks says, "I will not. I let it out all last night. I cried for 2 hours. I realized that I'd never accepted the loss of my husband. I worked hard. I kept busy. I did everything to pretend it never happened." Troy, "And you feel different now?" Brooks says, "Completely." "Can I share something important with you?" Troy says. Brooks is like, "Of course." She, Troy's like, "I've lost my temporarily lost my empathic sense. It's kind of having like one hand tied behind my back." Brooks says, "I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come back?" Troy's like, "No, no, no, I'm fine. It's just that I felt before we continue, it's important you know that." Brooks is like, "Okay." It doesn't make any difference to Brooks. It only makes a difference to Troy. "Because I can't tell how you feel this morning, but it seems to me one night of crying can't make up for months of denial." Brooks is like, "No, you're wrong. You're wrong. I feel better today than I have in ages. You're absolutely wrong, Deanna." So they're in the observation lounge, and Troy's Data says the probe's point of view reveals that the objects exist entirely in two-dimensional on a single plane. Jordy says they have length and width but no height, virtually flat. Data says that's why the ship's forward sensors did not detect them initially. "We are looking at them along their edge. There's no surface to read. I will illustrate." Picard says, "Are they a life form?" Data says the movement pattern within the cluster is not a naturally occurring phenomenon in the Newtonian sense. The objects appear to be alive. Riker says, "Can you explain why they're pulling us along with them?" Geordi says somehow they were able to polarize the gravitation field as they move about. "We're caught in the wake." Riker says, "So how can we get out of it?" Geordi says the best idea for now is to try a controlled overload of the warp drive. Jump directly to warp 6. The laws of three-dimensional universe say it should work. Not sure about a two-dimensional universe though. Picard says, "Fascinating. So many questions. How could a two-dimensional entity have access to a three-dimensional universe? And are they even aware of us? Number one, if we can pull off the Tibetans, I'd like to stay and investigate once we are free of this gravitation field." Geordi, "It's too bad they can't tell if they're setting it." And this is where Troy gets all upset, and she's like, she's so in her mind right now. Troy says, "What do you mean I'm doing the best I can?" Picard said, "No one suggested otherwise, Counselor. Mr. Data tried to isolate any signal patterns from the cluster. Perhaps we'll find a basis for communication. Um, we'll attempt your warp, Mr. LaForge, we'll attempt your warp jump as soon as you're prepared, that's all." And Picard tries to talk to Troy, but she runs out. So Troy goes running to sickbay, and Beverly's like, "How are you feeling?" She says, "Beverly, I can't do my job. I'm absolutely lost. You've got to do something." Beverly says, "I cross-referenced your scan results with the baseline files in the computer. Nothing helpful turned up. And so far the lab work is inconclusive." Troy says, "Inconclusive? What does that mean?" Beverly says, "It means that there's nothing I can do now. I'm still trying." Troy says, "How do you people live like this?" Beverly says, "We get by pretty well, actually, and so will you in time." Troy says, "You have no idea what this is like. How can you know what it's like to lose something you've never had?" Beverly says, "I don't claim to." Troy says, "And you're telling me I'm supposed to get used to it?" Beverly said, "If our positions were reversed, what would you tell me?" "If our positions were reversed, I wouldn't have been in here treating skinned elbows while you were laying passed out on the office floor. I would have been there a lot sooner, maybe in time to prevent this from ever happening." And you know that I could see every person that was able to see or hear or walk who loses those abilities and feel the exact same way TROI does. It's very understandable. That kind of loss of a limb, of an arm, of an eye, of sight could be very devastating, and I believe Diana would get that the way she's feeling is normal under these circumstances. But because she's the one injured, she doesn't see it. She has the right to feel this way because she has been injured, but she doesn't see it like a shrink. She's seeing it like the patient now. She's getting the other point of view. And there are millions of people in this world, especially military, who've lost limbs, and they all go through the initial shock, depression, denial, anger, getting rid of everybody in their lives, pushing them all away, recovery, therapy. Sometimes they recover, sometimes they don't. Well, I mean, like they recover physically, but they do not recover mentally, is what I'm saying. They need shrinks and they need help, and they have every right to all of those feelings. They do. It's something's happened to them. They've lost something, and she's right about people walking on eggshells, trying to overcompensate. But it's just learning to live with your situation, however difficult it is, and it could take years. Some people may never adjust to it, but the crew, she's her betazoid abilities are like a limb to her. I think she might have been better. I would she have seen it this way? Would she have been this angry, this hurt, if it had been a limb? Does she consider? I mean, we might consider a limb, you know, just as important as she considers her therapy, her telepathic abilities. So we'll see. And the fact that this happened at the same time the anomalies did, she should make the connection, but she's too upset. She's too devastated. She's too in her own head right now to see it. But she has every right to feel this way because it happens. Anybody that has anything happen like this has a right to feel this way. And I don't know if I mentioned it previously, but that cuckoo clock does not work. It just goes off whenever it wants to, and it seems to always go off when I'm doing a video. It stays quiet the entire rest of the day. It doesn't work. It doesn't tell time. It's stuck on 10 a.m. for about 20 years or so. And we put new batteries in it, and it chimes though. It chimes good, but it doesn't tell time. I bought it for my mom for Christmas in the 90s, maybe. So, we get this out. So, TROI goes to Picard. And she says, I've been working with Ensign Brooks since the death of her husband. She's avoided the reality of what happened and denied it to herself. And I realize I've been doing the same thing about my condition. Picard says that's perfectly understandable. TROI says, it's time I accepted the truth, Captain, and resign as ship's counselor. Picard's like, resign? She's like, I can no longer fulfill my obligations. What other option is there? Deanna, I have been fortunate in having access to your betazoid abilities. Most starship captains must be content with human counselors. Empathetic awareness is not a requirement of the position. TROI says, for me it is. Picard says, I'm sure after a while you'll be able to adjust. They say when one loses a sense, the other senses become stronger to compensate. A blind man develops better hearing. TROI, with all due respect, Captain, you don't know what you're talking about. That's a common belief which has no scientific basis. No doubt created by normal people who feel uncomfortable around the disabled. I'm disabled. I'm telling you that I cannot perform my duties. Picard says, there was a teacher of mine at the academy who had been confined to a wheelchair since birth. She was a woman. TROI says, spare me the inspirational anecdote and just accept my resignation, Captain. She leaves. Again, she's having the woe is me feeling massively sorry for herself, but she's very entitled to those feelings. Those feelings are normal. Anyone that has anything happen to them goes through the same thing, especially if it's a loss of a limb or sight or hearing. They can. It's a very natural thing to get angry and try to get people to leave you alone, so you can cry in your own misery. I'm sure she'd see this if she wasn't the patient. I mean, we've talked about this previously, but it's just normal to have these feelings. Woe is me, sad, depressed, angry, revolting, want to just wallow in our own sympathy. Those are all normal things that happen. All of it's normal. Again, they are teasing us with the Riker Troy relationship. They always do this, and then they destroy us later on. Um, she says to him, I would really rather be alone. He says, too bad. Troy says, this is how you handle all of your personal problems? Sure, because he's hugging her. You'd be surprised how far a hug goes with Geordi or Worf. Troy says, Will, I don't know what to do. Riker said, so you resign. You walk away from all the people who care about you. Troy says, I look around me and all I see is surfaces without depth, colorless, hollow. Nothing seems real. I'm real. No, you're not. You're a projection with no more substance to me than a character on a holodeck. Riker says, I don't believe that. Troy says, you have no idea how frightening it is to be here without sensing you, without sharing your feelings. Riker, that's it, isn't it? We're on equal footing now. What? You've always had an advantage, a little bit of control over every situation. That must have been a very safe position to be in. To be honest, I always thought there was something a little bit too aristocratic about your Betazoid heritage, as if the human side wasn't quite good enough for you. Troy's like, that isn't true. And Riker's like, uh-huh, it isn't. And Geordi calls him. So then they go to engineering. See the love there? See the love? Why can't we have that permanent? Just saying. So then Riker goes to the bridge. Allenby says new course at optimal shearing angle 2.27 Mark 203. Geordi says engaging impulse engines now. Picard says go to warp 30. Riker says status. Allenby says unchanged. We've not broken free of the gravitation field. And data says integrity field pressure increasing by 270%. Captain computer voice comes on warning of differential stress exceeding upper limit in 15 seconds. Picard says disengage all engines. Computer says warning differential stress will exceed. Geordi, engines disengaged, sir. Riker says report the forge. Geordi says the energy we wanted to transfer to the new cells was absorbed by the gravitation wake instead. It set up a torrential wave that rebounded back to the ship. We're lucky the hull is still in one place. Picard says this little nuisance is becoming to lose its fascination. Data said during our attempt to break away, I recorded a momentary alteration of the movement pattern within the cluster. Riker says, you think we got their attention, Data? Data says, perhaps, but just for an instant. Pattern immediately returned to its previous dynamic. Follow up on it, Mr. Data. Put your observations into Universal Translator. Perhaps these movements themselves are an attempt at communication. Data says, aye, Captain. Okay, now my favorite part of the episode. And you know, Whoopi celebrated a birthday on The View the other day, and I think it was Aretha Franklin that sang to her. So you have to check that out. It's always nice to see Whoopi. She's the best. She plays Guinan so well. she does it so well. Um, so Guinan says more tea, and Troy jumps a little. She goes, I didn't mean to startle you. Troy's like, that's all right. I'm getting used to it. Guinan says, may I? Troy says, sure. Are you really getting used to it? Troy says, no. Guinan says, do you want to talk about it? Troy says, no. Guinan says, good. I'm so tired of people coming in here with their problems. They come in, they want a shoulder to cry on, and generally it turns out to be mine. Troy says, you'd make a good counselor. Guinan says, I think so too, so I'm going to talk to Picard about it. Troy said, what, about becoming counselor? Guinan says, yeah, you're leaving. That means there won't be a counselor on board, and I suppose I'll have a very long line at the bar. It would be nice to have an office too. Ah! Troy says, it's more than letting them cry on your shoulder. It takes an enormous commitment. Guinan's like, I can do that. Troy's like, Guinan, people come to talk to you about things they want to reveal. A ship's council, you have to get them to talk about things they don't want to reveal. Guinan says, I could do that too. Troy says, what are you? You really don't want to be ship's counselor. Guinan says, what would make you say? Troy's like, I don't know. You're just not serious. Guinan says, have I given you any indication that I might not be serious? Troy says, well, not really, but then how do you know? Are your empathic abilities coming back? Trey says, no, I suppose it's just instinct. Then it says, oh. Trey says, I get it. You're trying to make me see that I have other abilities to draw on. Human intuition, instincts. Guinan, those skills only develop after years of experience. It's not so easy. Guinan said, no one said it was easy. It's much harder than you think. Human intuition and instinct are not always right, but they do make life interesting. Grace says, so I'm discovering. Riker asks Data if there's a problem. He goes, yes, Commander. Sensors are detecting highly accelerated interstellar gases. Riker says, suggesting? Data says, uncertain. The phenomenon is within visual range. Riker says, on-screen magnify. It appears to be a cosmic string fragment, sir, only 107 kilometers long. LNB says, a comic string? Riker says, no wonder that a proton with gravitational fields as powerful as a black hole. Data says, two-dimensional beings seem to be caught in the gravitational pull of the string. Their course is taking them directly toward it. Riker says, and us with it. Then we get a captain's voiceover. What began as a curious inconvenience has turned into a serious threat. At current speed, the two-dimensional beings and the Enterprise will be drawn into the cosmic string fragment within 7 hours. Data says the entities offer no indication that they are aware of the string fragment, sir. Their course and speed remain constant. Worf says, I recommend we fire a spread of photon torpedoes into their field. Picard says, must we destroy them to save ourselves? Data says it's unclear what effect a proton torpedo would have on two-dimensional beings, sir. Picard says, nevertheless. Geordi says, well, we wouldn't directly have to fire at them. Half a dozen proton torpedoes directly in their path could make them change course. Picard says, make it so. Worf says, torpedo arm fire distribution set, detonation several kilometers ahead of the cluster. Riker says, Data, launch another probe and match the monitors through to the main view. Data says, probe has been launched on screen. Picard says, proceed, Worf. Worf says, launching torpedoes, detonation 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1. Data says, no charge change in the gravitational field. The torpedoes are having no effect, sir. Picard says, fire another volley directly into their field, Mr. Worf. Worf says, launching torpedoes, detonation in 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1. Data says, antimatter explosions appear to be ineffective, sir. Okay, so then we're back in Troy's office, and she's still got the woe is me thing going on. And Janet shows up, and she goes, I meant to cancel your appointment today. Actually, I'm resigning as ship's counselor. And Brooke says, why? I think it's fairly clear during your last appointment it was obviously non-productive. I could not sense what you were feeling. Brooke says, Deanna, you were right about me. I had to go back and look at what I was doing to see why I was trying to convince myself and you that I was a new woman. You made me realize that I was doing exactly the same thing to myself as I was before. She's got that what the F look on her face. Like, how dare you say I said I was ineffectual. And she's coming back and go, no, 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 you were great. You were right on. See, TROI is so much in her head right now. You know, if you broke a leg, you can still type. If even with you may not be able to run or jog, but you could still type, you could still teach, you could still do a whole slew of occupations that don't require walking. Um, and TROI could still be a good ship's counselor without her betazoid stuff. She just needs to get past it. But it's too much in her head. It's too much of who she is. And she has the right to feel that way. I'm sure with counseling, she would she would understand it. She would see the light. If the shoe was on the other foot, she would see it. But right now she's got that how dare you contradict what I'm saying. But the lady's like, no, no, you were good. You were right. So Picard calls her back into the office. You wanted to see me, Captain? Picard says, yes, Counselor, sit down, please. Our situation has become critical. The cluster is still completely unresponsive. We have not been able to alter its course toward the cosmic string. TROI said, how much time do we have? Picard says, 5 hours, which is why I called you. And she's like, sir? He's like, all that remains is the possibility of communication. There might be some way that we can warn them of their impending destruction. TROI says, I thought Data already tried to establish communication through the universal translator. Picard said he tried every technical means at our disposal to reach out to them. TROI says, I wish I knew how to help, but under the circumstances. Picard says, if there is a psychology to these creatures, we must discover it. If there is an explanation to their behavior, we must know what it is. Even in your current condition, you are the most qualified person aboard this ship to assist. Picard says, Data is currently in the observation attempting to formulate a strategy. I'd like you to join him, Deanna. We need you. Now, that's the correct thing to say to a person who's going through all this. We need you to step up to the plate. So then we're in the observation lounge. There's a voiceover first. Captain's log supplemental. It's our speed and course remain unchanged. In 1 hour, the Enterprise will be torn apart by the gravitational forces of the cosmic string fragment. Then we go to the observation. TROI says, are your signals reaching them all? Data says, possibly, however, the beings may perceive them as an negligible noise rather than an attempt at communication. TROI said, is there any evidence at all that they're sentient? Data says, negative. The nature of their movement suggests a simple order of intelligence. TROI says, I'm sorry, Data. I don't seem to be much help without my empathic abilities. I don't know how to draw on my human instincts. Data says, as I have no human instinct per se, I cannot advise you, Counselor. TROI's like, right now I feel as two-dimensional as our friends out there is in this universe, barely aware of it, just trying to survive on instinct. Data says, what if they're simply acting instinctively? They are an inherent and inborn force that drives every species. What they need, what they fear, we've got to discover what drives the species. Data says, I do not believe there is a way to know for certain, Counselor. TROI says, we can speculate based on available evidence. Data says, the only evidence we have at present is the brief interruption in their movement pattern during our last attempt to break away. TROI says, which may suggest some kind of awareness of our presence. Data says, otherwise their course and speed have been constant. TROI says, on a straight line to the cosmic string. You've considered the string's gravitation is pulling them in. Data says, because the cluster is two-dimensional, I have enough direct evidence to support that assumption. However, it is the most reasonable hypothesis. TROI says, why? Data says, it is unlikely they would intentionally move towards a destructive force. TROI says, moths fly toward a flame. Horses sometimes run into a burning bomb. Data, don't you see? We've been thinking in three-dimensional. We have to think two-dimensional. Data says, pardon me? TROI says, subspace signals, photon torpedoes, nothing's had an impact. It's reasonable to wonder if a gravitational pull, even as strong as a cosmic string, would affect them. Data says, please continue. What if they've chosen a course to the cosmic string, a case of pure stimulus response, driven by instinct rather than instinct, just like the moth to the flame? So then TROI and Data have brought their ideas to Picard, Riker, Worf, and Geordi. Data says if Counselor Troy's supposition is correct, Captain, a replica of the string projected behind the cluster could induce them to reverse course, disrupting the gravitation wake long enough for us to escape. Riker says, how do you simulate a cosmic string? It has the gravitational force of 100 stars. Data says, I do not suggest we stimulate the gravitational field of the string fragment, rather the string's vibration. Riker says, vibration, we are not talking about a violin, Data. Birdie says Data's right. The principle is the same. A cosmic string emanates a characteristic set of subspace frequencies at atomic particles decay along its event horizon. I could use the ship's parabolic dish to amplify and reflect those frequencies back towards the cluster. The Enterprise itself could echo the cosmic string. Picard asks, how much time do we have, Mr. Worf? Worf says 23 minutes. Picard's like, make it so. Data says frequency can scan detectors engaged. Jody says receiving data. We're picking up frequencies across the entire electromagnetic and lower subspace spectrum. Try to isolate. Data, can you focus the reflector field for me? Data says stand by. I'm differentiating particle emission signatures now. Jody says good. That's doing it. Patterns are converging. Allenby says, same course, same speed, no change, sir. Worf says, we are beginning to encounter the gravitational effects of the string impacts in 4 minutes. Data says, sir, the shear force turbulence is impairing our ability to create an accurate stimulation. Riker says, Geordi, fire up the impulse engines and activate the ship's stabilizers. Data says electromagnets and subspace wave fronts approaching synchronization. Worf says 3 minutes to impact. Riker says status. Allenby says no effect on the cluster. Same course, same speed. Picard says let's try to turn up the volume. Increase intensity, Mr. Data. Data says increasing by 50%. Allenby says they're slowing. Jody says gravitational wake field is collapsing. Picard says Mr. LaForge, take us out of here. Geordie says, with pleasure. Allenby says the beings have resumed their course in the stream. 3 seconds to impact. It's all right. They're home. We're wrong. The cosmic string, it never was dangerous to them. It was the one place in the galaxy they most wanted to be. Riker says, Deanna. Troy says, yes, I sensed it. She's like, yes, my abilities have come back. Yes! Cosmic string was never dangerous to them. It was the one place in the universe they wanted to be. I love how Riker just he looks at her like he loves her. He looks at her like she's the only being in the world. I don't know why the writers didn't go with this. Of course, Jeannie Francis might have had an issue with it, but I mean, it just works. Um, so Troy says such overwhelming intensity of emotion with when we first encountered them, it must have been more than my senses could process. Riker says like a short circuit. Troy says something like that. Beverly, apology accepted. To Riker, the therapists are always the worst patients, except for doctors, of course. Come by and see me at my office later, okay? And then Guidance sits down, and Troy says, I was awful to her. Um, I well, you were just being human. Bryce says, I never fully appreciate how difficult and how rewarding it is to be human. I had a lot of help. Thanks. Guinan says, now is that council position still open aboard ship? Bryce says, it's been taken. Guinan says, I just thought I'd ask. Better hours, excuse me. And you, thank you for making me face my other half. Riker says, frightening, wasn't it? Bryce says, a little. You were right, though. There is something to be learned when you're not in control of every situation. Riker says, welcome to the human race. Troy says, by the way, if you ever call me Aristotic again. Well, that's the end of The Lost. Season 4, Episode 3, 182. Oh, just 3. Sorry, 182. Sorry. 183. We did 184. Oh, this is 184. Next week we'll do 185 and then we'll do 186. So please continue on Fridays to join me for Star Trek Next Generation Day and Flashback Mondays. And then during the week for my other book reviews, I'd really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm still trying to gain 1,000 subscribers for Christmas. Need a little miracle going here. So thank you very much for all your support, and please tune in next week. Thank you.